Mama's gone mad. Mama's gone mad. Mama's gone mad.
Hi, I'm Brenna, and this is the Mama's Gone Mad podcast.
Mama's gone mad. Mama's gone mad.
So today I'm being joined by a very lovely woman, Ruth, who I have known for about 6 years now, I think. She is a yoga instructor and she's a very positive, amazing woman, and I'm really excited for this episode, so I hope you enjoy it. We will be talking about PMDD, which means that some of the things we talk about may be a bit triggering, just to be aware.
Love you.
So, Ruth's with me. Hi, Ruth.
Hiya, Jenna.
Hi.
Brenna. Sorry, Brenna.
Good start. Yeah, we've only known each other for like 6 years. So you've come today to talk about PMDD.
I have.
Which we both... Would you still say you suffer with it? Would you say it's like a lifelong thing even though you've had surgery, or...?
I've had a hysterectomy to remove my ovaries.
Yeah.
Because the ovaries were predominantly triggering this PMDD.
Yeah.
Sometimes I still have episodes of... sometimes I'll look at myself and go, this feels like PMDD.
Yeah.
But not all the time.
Yeah.
Maybe once every 8 months.
I mean, they do say it's kind of chronic no matter what, don't they, for some? So I guess there's no real cure, is there?
I think a lot of it's...
Is Alessia?
I think a lot of the time it's just really, really looking after yourself.
Yeah.
And making sure you don't get too tired and too exhausted. Because sometimes being really, really tired can trigger PMDD episodes.
Yeah. So how did your PMDD diagnosis actually come about?
I rang the doctor's surgery, wanting an appointment, because I was ready to throw myself under a bus.
Yeah.
I couldn't take life anymore.
God, that's horrific, isn't it?
Yeah.
The
receptionist actually said, I rang the doctor's surgery, and I said, can I make an appointment, please, an emergency one? And she said, we haven't got any appointments left. And I went, it's really important. She said, can you tell me what it's about? I said, I'm ready to throw myself under a bus. I can't take this life anymore, and I need to see somebody. And within about 45 seconds, the doctor rang me and made me an appointment that afternoon, because she was really, really worried, because I sounded that desperate. And that day was the day that I was diagnosed with premenstrual dysphoric disorder, PMDD.
Yeah. So, how long had you been suffering with the symptoms of it before that?
Since I was 15 years old, and I was diagnosed when I was 46.
Oh my God.
So like 31 years.
So was it just that it kind of... Alessia's being a tyrant. Was it just that it had kind of... Was this like the worst time that you'd had with it? Was this like the most you'd suffered and that was why you were diagnosed? Or had it always been quite bad? It's all right.
It had always been quite bad, and I knew that it was something to do with my periods. I'd been to the doctors time and time again. When I was only 14, I went to the doctors, and I said to the doctor, I think I'm having mental health issues. I mean, this was before mental health was recognised. And I said, I really think I'm having mental health issues. Because when it's coming up to my periods, I feel really sad and really down. And she prescribed me with vitamin B6 tablets.
Yeah.
So I knew at a young age, I started my periods when I was only really young. I was like 10 and a half.
Similar to me.
Yeah.
I was around 11.
Yeah.
Very similar.
So I always used to get really angry and black out sometimes. And I knew it was something to do with my periods.
Yeah.
So the doctor as I said, prescribed me with some vitamin B6, told me to like look after myself, make sure I was eating properly. It was a course of vitamin B6, like all them years ago. I took them, didn't feel any different, stopped taking them, and then just I carried on having these bouts of rage inside me. And then later on, I went on the contraceptive pill, and it kind of subsided a bit, and I kind of forgotten that I used to get these rages.
I think that's really real to kind of forget how bad it can be.
Yeah.
And I don't think that's the issue when you go to the doctor sometimes, because you're not always in that moment, and then you're fine, so they don't see it. Do you know what I mean? And you can forget quite how bad it is, and then for me, I started doubting whether I should be there.
Yes.
I started thinking, why can't I cope? I just need to. I'm coping now, so why can't I cope?
And sometimes the relief of getting a doctor's appointment, because you're so relieved that someone's going to listen to you. You sit in the doctor's and you're like, oh well, I feel all right now.
Yeah.
And you feel like you're wasting their time.
Yeah.
And because you feel okay then, you come out without having discussed anything, and then a few weeks later, it starts again.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, well, I had an appointment. I don't want him to think I'm stupid.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's just going to look at me and think I'm just this stupid person who's a hypochondriac.
Yeah.
And just wanting attention.
And aside from that, these days, getting an appointment is so hard. It can put you off ringing, because you do feel like, oh, well, they've got so many people to see, and am I wasting their time? You know, oh, well, I'm fine now, so maybe I'll just be fine, you know, forever.
Yeah.
And then you dip back into it. For me, it was very quick. It was like I would be fine, and then I wouldn't. And it's as abrupt as that.
Yes.
And I think, like, I look back, because I'm similar to you, started my periods really young, and then I went through what was kind of seen as teenage anger issues. There was a lot going on at the time as well, which won't have helped. It will have triggered it, I think. But sometimes I would be absolutely fine, and then other times I would be like you. I would be so angry at the world for no reason. Like, not the smallest inconvenience could set me off. And it got worse and worse, and it was always seen as, well, she's a teenager, she's causing trouble, she wants attention.
Yeah.
She doesn't want to be in school. Yeah, she's getting bullied, and that maybe that's true, you know. And it was always kind of palmed off. But separate to that, I was having a lot of pain on my periods, unbelievable pain. I would bloat, like, to the point I was always accused of being pregnant. I would have really, really, really bad aches, fatigue, migraines were always a bad one for when I was like ovulating or due on, and the heavy bleeding. It was just all in a one, but it felt like a separate issue to me. I didn't link them like you did.
Yes.
Do you know what I mean? I was, because I was being told I was just a teenager, so I was just angry and I was hormonal. I wasn't thinking, oh, this is linked to my periods or my ovulation. I just wasn't seeing that. So I think, like, at the age of sort of 14, 15, for you to have linked that, I think that's incredible, because I really didn't.
Yeah. But I used to be just happy-go-lucky, getting on with things, going to school, wearing makeup, having boyfriends. And then every now and again, something would trigger me. It would maybe be, I can't even put my finger on it now, but something would trigger me, and then that would be it. I would totally fly off the handle, get into such a rage, like a Tasmanian devil, breaking things, smashing things, and...
Okay, sorry, I paused that because Alessia needed a snack. It was urgent. So, you were saying about rage. You would have this fly off the handle, unbelievable rage at the slightest sort of trigger.
Yeah, but it was just now and again. I wasn't like that all the time. The slightest little thing would set me off on this amazing rage, and I'd be like a bull in a china shop, like a Tasmanian devil, to the point of not recognising who I was.
Yeah.
And then flying off the handle, having this massive, massive berserk shouting, screaming, blacking out,
Yeah.
and then coming round in about half an hour's time and not remembering what I'd done.
I can really relate to that.
And because it was like, it almost like as if it was somebody else
Yeah.
that had took over and was this just like
And it
intense
makes, I mean,
rage.
for me, it makes my entire body tense up.
Yeah.
I could feel myself gritting my teeth. I would
Yeah.
talk through gritted teeth. I say would, obviously, for me, it's still very much an ongoing process. Like when it has eased since I've been on the Zoladex in the chemical menopause, but I still get the odd moment of it.
Yeah.
And then I look back and I'm like, I feel terrible because obviously I've got 3 children. I've got Stuart, and Stuart naturally gets the brunt of it, unfortunately, because he's here and he's kind of my safe space. But then I feel horrific for doing that.
Oh.
And I think, like, obviously Stuart listens to this and I think it'll surprise him how similar yours was to mine.
Yes. And I think sometimes it's when you're walking around thinking that you're crazy because you have these massive outbursts of rage and multiple personalities come out in that time. I'm not saying it happened all the time. Just every now and again, leading up to my period, I would get dead angry, really, really angry, and people just had to get out the way.
Yeah.
I pinpointed it down to me menstrual cycle.
Yeah.
However, people in the family were like, oh, for God's sake, here we go again. Here we go. Get out of our way.
Yeah.
And then being shouted at and raged at, pack it in.
Yeah.
What's wrong with you? And I couldn't get this anger out of me.
Yeah.
And then people were triggering me even more. So I would just go into an even more rage, feeling like my head was going to explode and pop, and going dead red. And like you say, going dead tense everywhere. I can still remember how that felt all them years ago. The rage
And that
inside
rage,
me.
it almost hurts, doesn't it? Because your entire body tenses up to the point where you're so tight.
Yeah.
And I think because, I mean, I don't know if you got the aches and pains and things like that with your PMDD. I definitely did, and that really triggered that. So I would be tensing up, my entire body would tighten, and then I would be achy afterwards.
Yeah.
And it was like a kind of vicious cycle of, okay, I'm in pain, then I'm angry, or I'm angry, then I'm in pain, I'm crying randomly, and I could never figure out, I didn't see the link.
Yeah.
And I always thought I was going crazy with my physical symptoms and, you know, my mental symptoms.
Yeah.
Because no one was linking them. And, you know, we were constantly at the doctor's. It was almost every month. My mum would have me at the doctor's. And she would bring up both things separately. And I went to counselling. And I think because there was so much going on separately to my periods, it was always put down to those on that side. So that's your mental health. That's because of those. Do these things and you'll feel better. Take these pills, you'll feel better. And then on the other side, it was, well, she has PMS. She believes heavily. It's fine. Like, loads of people suffer with PMS. Periods are meant to hurt. You know, that's the kind of things we were being told. But when I was put on the pill, it made me worse, personally. The pill triggered me. The coil triggered me. I tried both coils to no avail. And it got to the point I was terrified to put anything in my body. Because I would just be like, is this going to make everything worse again? And it's quite scary because you need, obviously, with PMDD, you need the treatment. But when you're terrified to try the treatment, because they say you've got to try it for 6 weeks, but I can't spend 6 weeks angry and feeling hopeless and hating myself and driving everyone away from me, because by the time them 6 weeks are up, if this hasn't worked, what's it for?
Yeah. I totally get that, because when you're frightened of putting these extra hormones into your body, because you know it's going to make you feel strange. I was often put on antidepressants, and I can remember feeling my chin wobbling, like trembling sometimes, because I was put on antidepressants for the wrong reason.
Yeah.
I can remember my chin trembling and not being able to sleep, and then getting these like rushes of heat all over my body and not being able to cool down, because they were trying to put back in the happy hormones into your brain, but I wasn't lacking them happy hormones. What I was, well, I don't even know now what I was lacking and what I needed into my body to help these mood swings that were associated with my period. When I was taking the pill, I was a lot better in myself. I was a lot happier. I was put on the pill for contraception. I wasn't put on it for my PMDD, because I'd never ever heard of PMDD before, all those years ago. And then a bit later on in my life, well, not a bit later on in my life, when I was like 17, the grand old age of 17, I met this lad, and we had this relationship. It turned out to be a really bad choice of relationships. During this time, I used to get really, really severe abdominal pains, and then I would, because I was in this relationship and it didn't suit me, I used to get these rages. He sensed that I would get these rages, and he used to wind me up. He
was trying to be the trigger.
Yeah, and he was triggering me. He was triggering this rage that would have been laid dormant. And so this rage would come out. And then I experienced these really bad lower abdominal pains. And after going to the doctors, loads and loads, the doctor sent me for a laparoscopy, where they blow your belly up with gas.
That's what I had.
And put cameras in, and they found out I had something called endometriosis. So whilst I had the endometriosis, I was put on a high strength hormone to stop my periods, and in this time my rages stopped. I've just put loads and loads and loads of weight on, because the hormone tablets I was taking mimic pregnancy to stop the endometriosis growing, and then you're only allowed that for 6 months, because it's like a really high dose of hormones. And then coming off that, the rages started again. But I just thought I was in the wrong relationship, but I just thought I was dead angry because I was with this guy who used to wind me up. So being diagnosed with the endometriosis and then being put on these different kind of hormone treatment to stop the endometriosis growing, it kind of made me nice, and I didn't rage as much. So I was quite calm, and I wasn't wound up with like little things. I wasn't triggered.
Right, so we had to pause again. Alessia just needs constant snacks, I think. So basically, we've just been kind of talking about how because we got to know each other because I came to one of your yoga classes. I mean, I came to a couple, but that was how we met.
Yes.
And the kids were really young, so we've known each other like 6-7 years. And basically, we both have allotments. Do you still have your allotment?
We've still got the allotment.
We both have allotments, and you contacted me one day about some plants.
Yeah, because we had loads and we didn't know what to do with them.
Yeah.
We knew you had an allotment.
Yeah,
but,
and we're always keen for free plants.
I wonder if Brenna wants these.
Yeah, so you contacted me, and I was meant to meet you to get them, wasn't I?
Yes.
And I couldn't get out of bed. I couldn't get out of the house. It was lovely weather, and I was really ill. And you started speaking to me about what it was. And I basically said, it's my periods, it's always my periods. But I was getting myself in a really low way. about it. I felt totally useless. Stuart had to take both the kids to the allotment because I couldn't get out of bed, I couldn't do anything. And you were the first person to ever mention PMDD to me that time. And that kind of triggered me to read up a bit about it, and I asked my doctors about it, but at the time they were really set on endometriosis. So I was given the laparoscopy, and when they found there was no endometriosis, my intention then was to go ahead and speak to them again about PMDD.
Yes.
But I think it was kind of because a lot of my physical symptoms still hadn't been linked. So I was diagnosed with IBS at about 15, and I don't know now whether I actually have IBS, because I was diagnosed with that because basically I would have flare-ups of my stomach, a lot of pain, bloating, troubles going to the loo. But it was always around the time of my period. But that hadn't been linked. As I was saying, they just hadn't linked things yet.
Yes.
So I think because a lot of my symptoms that I was mainly concerned about were the fact I was bleeding heavily. I was on-off anemic. I was ill. And I kind of blamed those for my mental health. So I think, well, of course I feel crap because I can't get up. Of course I feel crap because I'm useless. You know, of course I feel crap because I go in these rages and I don't know why. I get angry. Why can't I cope? Everyone else is coping around me. And same as you, slightest things would trigger it, and I would go on this unbelievable rage and I had no control over it. So I felt like I was a bad person, and I started doing research as to whether I could be a narcissist, as to whether I had personality disorders. I started researching all sorts because I just thought I need an answer.
Yeah.
I remember saying to Stuart, "Do you think I'm a narcissist?" And he was like, "No, of course, I don't think you're a narcissist."
No, you're not a narcissist.
Why am I so caught up on myself? Why do I think the world owes me something randomly? Because that's what it was. It felt like entitlement. It felt like if the slightest thing went wrong, I'd go in a rage. And I felt like I was being petty and horrible and
blaming everybody else.
Yeah, and I felt angry at the world for things that the world didn't owe me. When the rest of the month, I never felt entitled. I've always believed you work for things. You know, I was raised in that kind of family dynamic.
Absolutely.
We work hard. You know, the world doesn't owe you anything, unfortunately. You have to get on with it. So it really confused me. And then the thing was, after my laparoscopy, so I was on Zoladex for 6 months before that. Then I had my laparoscopy, and I felt great in those 6 months. I wasn't ill. You alright, Leslie? I'll just pause again for a sec. Right, sorry. So basically, I was on Zoladex for 6 months, and that, in my opinion and Stuart's opinion, fixed everything. I felt incredible. I had the hot flushes. And the hot flushes brought on like sickly feelings, and yet I never ever questioned any of those against what I was going through before. I was like, no, I'll take all of this. I'll take the sleepless nights. I'll take all of this, because the menopause is hard, isn't it? You know, it's tough
absolutely.
on your body.
Yeah.
And it can be tough on your brain. I would have moments of being like, oh, you know, it just feels a bit much. But then I would be like, no, I can't go back to that. This is incredible. It's amazing how low your expectations are, isn't it, when you have PMDD? Like, the menopause feels amazing. And after that, I had the laparoscopy. And then after the laparoscopy, I fell pregnant with Alessia. So, of course, everything went on hold with my symptoms and therefore being diagnosed with anything. It was just, well, you haven't got endometriosis. Fell pregnant again. 9 months pregnancy, then breastfeeding. So still, I didn't have any periods. So it was quite an extended length of time. And then when I had my first period again, I had to ring the doctors that day because I said, I can't carry on like this. I mean, I do suffer with heavy bleeding, which didn't help, but it was the low feelings. It was like the self-doubt. It was the anger and the fatigue and the pains. I had an awful migraine. I mean, I passed out upstairs. I had the kids on my own. I passed out. I had to ring Stuart and say, you need to come home from work because I physically can't look after these children. And that's like a horrible thing to have to admit. And then, of course, I was fine again when I was off my period. You know, like a couple of weeks after, I was fine.
Yeah.
So it was like, okay, this isn't too much of an issue. And then, of course, periods kept coming and it kept happening again. And the problem was, my first appointment when I'd seen them after breastfeeding Leslie, I said, yeah, it's the heavy bleeding that's the issue. Because like you were saying, I kind of felt like, oh no, I'm fine now. It was a hard day, that's all it was, so I felt rubbish, but I'm fine. And then it was the 2nd of January this year. I've never in my life felt as low as that. I felt numb to the world. I felt like I was an issue to everybody in my life. Like, everyone would be happier if I had never existed. I felt like the kids deserved a life without me.
Oh, Bruna.
And I was texting my husband saying, when you're home, I need you to look after the kids. And he was like, yeah, no problem. And he came home. And I said, you will look after them, won't you? And he was like, yeah, of course, what you need to do. Because he just thought I wanted to have a shower or go for a walk or something.
I'll just have some me time.
Yeah, and I was like, I'm done. I was like, this is me. This is the end of me. And he convinced me, obviously, to not do anything horrible and awful to myself, and he sort of stayed with me. And then I had an appointment on the 6th anyway, and he said, just 4 more days, get through 4 days, and I'll do it with you. And, you know, he's incredibly so supportive. And then I went to gynecology, and I said, I need you to come in with me, because I'm just going to say it's fine again. Like, I knew it's like that cycle. And hello, Alessia. Is that your finger? That's good. Yeah, she's just pointing to her hand. And he came in with me, and he basically said to the consultant, if you don't do something, she's not going to survive. So if something happens right now, or we're not leaving, you know. And he was very, very stern about it. And he was like, it's linked to her periods. She goes low every month, she goes angry every month, and he sort of linked it for me. And he said, this cannot carry on, she cannot have another period. And I was due on the 26th, so they put me on Zoladex from that day. And then I think it was on the 28th of January I got that letter where they diagnosed me, because the junior doctor had gone and spoken to another consultant about it. You are loud, aren't you? Yeah, you're beautiful, but you're loud. All I can hear is Alessia. Yeah, from then I've been fine again. Obviously, I have the odd moment, you know, like you. I still get a bit thing, and I think this time around with being on HRT, it doesn't feel the same. It feels a bit less amazing than last time for me. I don't know if it's just the HRT has been settling in or whatever, but
Okay.
it hasn't been quite as good this time, but it's still a hell of a lot better. I haven't felt that unbelievably low. It was the first time I've ever truly understood why someone would commit suicide.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? It was the first time I was like, I get it. I can see how the fear was not there to end my life. It's such an awful thing to think, and obviously I'm really glad that it's been diagnosed and I'm being treated, and I'm praying for a hysterectomy. But I mean, we put on Facebook, didn't we, I put on Instagram, we put on Facebook about doing this episode. That's broomstick, Alessia. Thank you. Tap. We put on Facebook, on our social medias, about doing this episode, and you had quite a few women contact you, didn't you, about it?
Yeah, I've had 5. I know 5 ladies who, 6, including you.
Yeah.
7, myself,
Yeah, including yourself.
who have PMDD, and I think there's about 1 in 20 women who have severe PMS. Maybe it's not PMS.
Yeah,
It could be
PMDD.
It could be PMDD. PMDD, for a reminder for anyone, it's
Premenstrual
short for
dysphoric disorder.
premenstrual
I'm just proud of
dysphoric
myself for
disorder. Yeah, to remind ourselves. And premenstrual dysphoric disorder is a really, really, really horrible condition to have. As Brenna's as you have just said, you wanted to end your life.
Yeah.
And that's not normal. It's not normal to want to end your life, to end this beautiful life that you've got. There's people who love you. There's people care about you. But when we are in that PMDD
it's almost
area,
like a black hole. I think you just get sucked in, and you cannot clean yourself out of it.
Yeah. So I think when you're really, really in the throes of PMDD, you would rather be dead than have to face another day, waking up in the morning and thinking, here we go again. Here we go again. I didn't die in my sleep, and I've got to face this. I've got to get up. I've got to go and face the world, and I really, really can't be bothered. I just want to lie in bed and hide away from the world. I don't want to look at anybody. I don't want to see anybody. I don't want people to judge me, because there's always somebody out there that have got things better than you, and you can stand back and go, well, my life's absolutely shit, and I can't live with this life anymore. What's the point? And on the day that I was diagnosed with PMDD was the day that I realised I wasn't crazy.
I think she's lost her ball again. Okay, so we've been for a walk, because that all got quite deep and heavy, didn't it? So
Needed to clear the air a little bit.
And Alessia needed a nap, so it worked out quite well. We went for a walk, had a lovely chat. So you were saying about the fact you were diagnosed after going into this really low way. It's obviously, I get that, it's a horrific way to feel, but you said you were diagnosed pretty quickly after that, so how did the doctor know that was what you were suffering with?
Okay, so what I'd actually done was, I had this calendar, and I was writing down on my calendar, using faces and words, saying how I felt on my calendar, and I put it on the fridge so that my husband could see it and my son, because they just didn't understand why I would go in these massive, massive rages. Yeah. And they thought I was angry with them. Yeah. Sorry, it wasn't my husband at the time, it was my boyfriend. And we were engaged to be married. But I needed them to flip through the calendar and go, yeah, she's not right. Something, she's not right. She's going to be happy, she's going to be depressed, she's going to be angry. So I knew when I would feel like that, the days of the month, and I knew that a couple of days before my period, they would be the worst. They would be the absolute worst days of my life. And I was in the doctor's surgery. Me and my husband were there, because like you, I would have maybe forgotten things to say, but I did have this calendar as evidence, of what my moods were like. And she spent a good 5 minutes looking through the calendar. She didn't just skim through it, because there was about 6 months worth of data, I suppose, on this calendar. And she was looking through it, and she was like making little notes, and she looked up at me and she said, "What do you actually think is wrong?" And I said, "I think I've got PMD. I think I've got PMT."
And what's PMT for anyone who's listening?
Well, PMT is premenstrual tension. PMS is premenstrual syndrome. It's roughly the same, in the same category. Yeah. And she said it's not PMT. It's not PMS. It's something called PMDD. And she wrote it down, and she wrote down what it was. And PMDD stands for menstrual dysphoric disorder. And as the name suggests, pre-menstrual, before period, dysphoric. The dysphoric part is when you don't recognise yourself.
Yeah.
Because everything gets distorted.
Yeah.
You look in the mirror, you don't know who you are. You look in the mirror, you don't recognise yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And the disorder is putting it all together. So this PMDD. And she said, you're not going mad, you're not going crazy. It isn't really widely recognised, but you have this condition. And she held my hands and she said, it is going to get better. I'm going to make sure that you get the help that you need.
Mm-hmm.
You've suffered for long enough. You've suffered nearly all of your life for this. And I really need to stress, Ruth, you're not crazy.
Yeah.
You're really not crazy.
And that's massive, because you convince yourself that you are, don't you? You convince yourself that, I mean, as I said, I convinced myself I was a narcissist and that I was a horrible person. And I started to convince myself, and I think this goes into the dysphoria of it, I started to convince myself that for the other few weeks of the month, however, it was usually about a week I got where I was good, that for that week I was pretending to be good. I convinced myself that I was an awful person, but for 1 week a month I pretended I was a nice person. I pretended I loved others, because I was so deep in this way.
In the cycle of...
Yeah, and it was like, I know that I am a nice person. I know that I'm not a horrible person. I know I'm not a narcissist, but in that time, I was sure that I was faking being good, and really I was bad.
Because you didn't know how to be
how to control
anymore.
it, yeah. And I think that's like, when you're saying about looking in the mirror, I think that's what people maybe who have not suffered like this won't understand. You genuinely can't see you anymore when you're in it. And it's like, because you goes a lot deeper than looks anyway, but you look, I mean, I personally look different. I looked tense, I looked upset, I looked angry. I just couldn't look like the happy person I am, because I am actually a happy person, but when I'm in my PMDD modes, I'm not a happy person. And it's horrible, and I kind of felt the same. I still feel awful for what Stuart must have suffered with for years, of thinking that it was always him upsetting me, because I know that he's changed his behaviours in certain ways to try and appease me, to try and calm me, and I never wanted him to do that when I was in that good week, because I was like, no, you don't, it's not you, and I knew it wasn't him, but then I'd be in it and it was him in my head. Do you know what I mean?
Everything was his fault.
Yeah, and it was like, I didn't want him to tame the kids or tame himself or be different around me, but he had to at times. And it was like, I look back now and I just think that was years of where we would get one nice week out of 4, and that's so. I mean, you were saying you got 3 days out of 4 weeks. Like, it's horrible. It takes over your life. It's debilitating. It's
and in that week or them 3 days that you get where you feel nice, you spend that all of them 3 days feeling guilty, wretched.
Yep.
You need to apologise to everybody.
Yep.
You need to try and be, like you said, a different person, thinking, why am I feeling nice? Why am I feeling okay? I'm usually crazy. Who is this? Who is this person? And in those 3 days, or however long, that you feel normal, I feel really emotional.
That's all right. It's a very heavy subject, though.
But you're absolutely petrified, because you know it's going to come again.
Yeah.
It's like having this monster living inside you that's lying dormant for just 3 days a month, and you're like, oh, it's going to come back, and it's going to happen again, and I'm going to be having to apologise to everybody, and I can't do it anymore.
Yeah.
And that was when I would have these feelings of, what am I going to be like next time?
Yeah.
Please God, please don't let me be that horrible bitch that I was. I've been horrible to me fiance, I've been horrible to my son, I'm hiding away. I don't want to see anybody because this is just totally wrecking my life.
Yeah.
And it's gone on too long now, and I really, really need help. So I had endometriosis when I was younger,
Yeah.
and always been recommended to have a hysterectomy because of the endometriosis, because it wasn't getting any better. And then when I went to see this lovely doctor who diagnosed me with the PMDD, she said, after looking at my notes on the computer, "Do you want any more children?" I said, "No, I don't want any more children." And she said, "You've been recommended to have a hysterectomy for such a long time, Ruth, for the endometriosis. You've had hormone after hormone after hormone. Your body needs a rest."
Mm-hmm.
And she said, "Do you not think it's about time that you really considered having this hysterectomy?" She says, "I'm aware that you're frightened of having a hysterectomy because there's no going back."
Yeah.
She said, "But I'm really, really concerned for you and your mental health. And as you've came in here today, you can't take another day."
I'll pause.
So I went back to the gynaecologist. I had an appointment anyway.
Yeah.
So I went back to the gynaecologist and I said to the gynaecologist, my doctor's, what's the word?
Referred?
No.
Advised?
Diagnosed.
Diagnosed.
Diagnosed me with something called PMDD. And he went, the demon inside. So he'd heard of it. There wasn't a lot of doctors who knew about PMDD at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And I asked him what I could do. Could I have my hysterectomy now? And he said, if you have your hysterectomy, there's no going back.
Mm-hmm.
You won't have your ovaries anymore. You won't have your womb anymore. How are you going to feel about that? He said, you've mentioned before that if you had a hysterectomy, you wouldn't be a woman anymore. And he said, you'll always be a woman.
Mm-hmm.
You'll always be a woman. It's entirely up to you. I want you to go away. We are quite prepared to give you your hysterectomy because of the extent of your endometriosis. But I need you to go away and have a really good think about it, because there's no going back. And when you have your hysterectomy, you'll go straight into menopause.
Yeah.
He said you'll age faster. You might get osteoporosis,
Yeah.
osteoarthritis,
Yeah.
things like that. So it isn't a decision that you can take lightly. I need you to go home and think about it. So I went home, thought about it for ages. I spoke about it for ages, and then I thought, I can't take another day of this.
Yeah.
I really can't take another day of wanting to be dead.
Yeah.
Because PMDD didn't just take away my life. It had really, really affected my fiance's life.
Yeah.
He was terrified. He would come home one day and find me dead.
Yeah.
Whichever way I'd chosen to take my own life.
Yeah.
And he was walking on eggshells all the time, terrified of saying the wrong thing, because he knew what phase is she in with this bloody cycle of hers. A lot of men don't understand what women have to go through every month, but this was like PMT on steroids, and it just took away my life, took away his life, and I just thought, enough's enough. I'm ready for this new chapter in my life.
Yeah.
So, about 6 months after being diagnosed with the PMDD, I had my full hysterectomy. And whilst I was recovering from my full hysterectomy, they took out my womb, they took out my ovaries, they took out my fallopian tubes, everything. 3 days later, when I should have been in my raging stage, I sat on the side of the bed and I thought, oh my God, I'm not raging.
Yeah.
I don't want to kill myself. And I wanted to like jump up and down. Obviously I couldn't because I just had surgery.
Yeah. That wouldn't have been a good idea.
Aye, because I just had surgery. And I realised then that it was the best decision I'd made for my own mental health.
Yeah.
Because I really do feel that if I hadn't had my hysterectomy, I wouldn't be sitting here with you now.
Yeah. I mean, from there as well, it seems like your life has just gone from positive to positive because you went sober, you quit drinking, which I think is a very healthy choice. Obviously, I'm open about the fact I love a wine. I was raised on fine wine, I love the taste, but I also don't really get drunk. Do you know what I mean? So I've found that balance because I know it's bad for my mental health. But that must have helped a lot as well, physically, mentally. And then, of course, you went into teaching yoga, which everyone knows is incredible for your body and your mind and your soul.
Yes.
So from getting diagnosed with PMDD, it seems like from there, your life just totally restarted. A total fresh start, healthy start, happy start.
Yes.
And of course, like you've said, you still get the odd little blip where you think, oh, is this it? And I get that because I think with PMDD as well, it's so traumatic. And that's what people won't really understand. It's like you still, like when I first went on to the Zoladex, I would still question, oh, well, I should be angry now. I kind of went through that same thing you did. This is where I'm meant to be mad. This is where I would usually be upset or angry or...
Raging.
I would want to throw things, smash things. And I wasn't feeling like that. And I think it's the trauma of your mind going, this is it. We're ready for this to hit again. And it must be nice to know that that's permanent for you, that you've had your hysterectomy, that you're making healthier choices.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Can I just say that having a hysterectomy is the last resort
Yeah.
for someone with PMDD because, like the gynecologist said to me, there's no going back.
Oh, yeah, you're stuck with it, yeah.
There's absolutely no going back. And your life does change. My life changed for the better, 100%.
Mm-hmm.
It changed my marriage, changed my relationship with my friends, changed my relationship with the people that I love.
And yourself, I would imagine.
And the one person who I mostly changed it with was myself.
Yeah.
I began to love this person again in a way that I've never loved myself before. Appreciate myself. Appreciate the power of the human brain, the human mind, and how your hormones can really affect you and trick you.
Mm-hmm.
And now looking back, I don't think I would have done it any differently. I think I would have still went through all these really, really hard episodes of my life.
Mm-hmm.
I'll never ever forget being so vulnerable and wanting to end my own life.
Yeah.
But that's made me, having that has made me so strong.
Yeah.
In myself. And like you say, I do now teach yoga and mindfulness and in a studio, and I've got a lovely following with such lovely students who come back. They know I'm real.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I've always been into exercise, and when I was in the throes of my PMDD, I would go spinning, or I'd go out on my bike.
Mm-hmm.
I bought a bike to help my mental health, and I would go spinning at the sports centre. I would go lifting weights, go for a walk, listening to music, when I felt able to. Because when you're in the throes of PMDD, you can't do a thing.
Yeah.
You sometimes can't even put one leg out the bed.
This is like the bit that I don't think people get, is that it really takes over your life. Because I have ADHD as well, so I'm naturally very active. I'm like I mean, you came in today, I was like dotting around, I was up and down, I was like, and you literally gave me a hug to try and calm me down and just like, just settle, it's fine kind of thing. But that's just how I am. I'm very like, I move around a lot. I have to try and keep myself busy. And when I'm due my period, to not be able to get out of bed, for me, is one of the hardest things. And I know that it has impacted Stuart's work life, and I know that people I know that a lot of people associated with Stuart didn't like me very much for a long time. I know that some of them are beginning to like me more because they're getting to know the other me, but I think that all they knew was Stu wasn't going out as much. He was having to work from home or miss work, because I was very nervous to let anyone know how useless I was in that time. Do you know what I mean? Mm. That's how it feels though, doesn't it? Yeah. You can't get up. When you do, your body hurts like hell. Like for me, I would get up and it felt like, you know when you've done like kettlebells, it felt like that, like everything ached, but I hadn't done exercise, so I hadn't had the positive to counteract the negative. I couldn't eat on my periods. I just couldn't, everything I ate came back up, so I had no energy. I was bleeding heavily, so obviously I was in and out of anemia. I would get migraines, so even the light or the noise of the kids was too much, and it was like all that, plus the anger, which would then take all the energy I did have away. I felt in that time totally useless. So that was like maybe a week and a half of a month. And the other sort of maybe half a week was pure anger. So I couldn't link that to the physical stuff, do you know what I mean? That's like I was saying earlier. So I feel awful for how much my health has affected Stuart as well, because I know that he doesn't see his friends as much anymore as he used to, because they don't get it. There's a few of them who, even though they don't get it, they've stuck by him, and that's incredible, because that's what friends are, isn't it? Yeah. But there's a few who just, and I understand why. He was 25 when he met me, so I must have looked like this controlling girlfriend who kept him in. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. And I've always, I would, at the time, I would have preferred them believing that over the truth. I can't get up and I'm an angry bitch. Because that's what it was, do you know what I mean? I was a useless angry bitch, that's how it felt. And it's like, I'm still learning to look back and go, no, that wasn't me. That was, as you said, that was the demon. That was nothing to do with me. I'm not that person. And I think me and Stuart are still healing from that in a way. And it's like, he still feels cautious to sometimes bring things up with me, and he still feels cautious to say stuff, and I'll always let him know, because we still get dips. I'll always let him know if I'm in a dip, and I'll say, right, bring that up in a few days, and we'll go for a bit, and we'll talk about it, because it needs said. Yeah. But we've found our own way of healing together, and this year, last year, I'm not joking, was the closest we've come to divorcing. Really? And bear in mind, we got married 7 months after we met. No one ever believed it was going to last. And yet, this year, only the year after, is the strongest we've ever been in our marriage, ever. Mm. And it's the most hopeful we've ever felt for the future, because I must admit, I think I'm heading for either long-term Zoladex with HRT or a hysterectomy. And at 28, that's a massive decision, and it's a difficult decision because it affects your body, your mind, your health. It affects everything. Mm-hmm. And that's the thing, I would rather have all of that than this.
The mental health issues that come with PMDD.
And the physical. It's too much. You know, I'd take everything over that. So I think I'm heading that way. And, you know, me and Stuart have discussed it, because it's such a thing. Even the recovery, it's massive. You know, it's a big thing on your body, but we've discussed it. And I think we now feel so hopeful for the future. And it feels nice to be able to have this conversation and not think, oh, I'm heading for that again. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. And because I now know to advocate for myself and walk into a doctor's office and say, I have this and it makes me do this, this and this, and I can't live with that, I feel so much stronger than I did in the past, going in and saying, well, no, I'm okay now, but I wasn't a few days ago, but it must have been a bad day.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really, really interesting that you say that, because in front of me I've got a list of the PMDD symptoms that women have. And the psychological symptoms, I mean, this is a really, really big list. The psychological symptoms are irritability, nervousness, lack of control, agitation, anger, insomnia, difficulty in concentrating, depression, severe fatigue, anxiety, being confused, forgetfulness, poor self-image, paranoia, emotional sensitivity, crying spells, moodiness, and trouble sleeping. And that is just the psychological symptoms.
And that's a huge list you're holding, because we printed it out and it's massive how many symptoms you can have in different parts of your body.
Yeah, and that's just the psychological symptoms. So when you described how you were knackered, well, you didn't say knackered, but you said you were really tired. Because when we're feeling all of those things, irritated, anxious, paranoid, forgetfulness, anger, we tense our whole body. So it's like you said, you feel like you've been in kettlebells.
Yeah.
And doing kettlebells, it has a positive effect on your body.
Yeah.
And you feel achy. However, when you're feeling like all of these psychological symptoms, your brain sometimes doesn't know the difference between you doing a round of kettlebells, then you're just being totally anxious.
It's unbelievable how tense you can get. Like, I felt like every single part of my body would go tight, and it's like, and I was speaking, I've done a recording for what will go out next week with Molly after this one goes out, and I was speaking to her about my ADHD and how sometimes and I was saying to Molly that when I get overstimulated, when there's too many different lights or movements, when there's too much noise, I feel like my body tenses up. So sometimes I was struggling to actually differentiate. I was blaming a lot once I got diagnosed with ADHD. Before my diagnosis of PMDD, I constantly blamed ADHD. But then there was times I was in a calm space. You know, I was in a calm room with a candle lit and nothing going on. And I'd convinced myself I was overstimulated in this room. And I was trying to find impossible situations to put myself in to feel calm. And now I get that those were the PMDD symptoms.
And now it's been... I was reading online the other day that PMDD and ADHD are linked.
Yeah, they're very strongly linked.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Claire McNulty was telling me that, actually, because when I got diagnosed, I contacted her. Because the woman who I had an episode about ADHD with, the wellbeing coach, I contacted her and said, would you believe I've been diagnosed with PMDD as well, because she has it? And she said, you know, it's really strongly linked with ADHD. And so I read up on it, and it's unbelievable.
Yeah. It is. What I can say is, for anybody listening who's got PMDD symptoms and ADHD symptoms, please go and get help. I know it takes a long time to get an appointment with the doctors, but push it.
Yeah.
Don't settle. Don't be brushed off with anything. Make notes, because you can guarantee when you walk into that doctor's office, you forget what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Because sometimes walking into that doctor's office is like a release and a relief, and you're like, I forgot what I was talking about.
Oh, wait, I'm fine.
Yeah, I'm fine. And also, you need to really, really, really look after yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Don't expect anybody else to look after you the way that you can, because people aren't mind readers. If somebody doesn't know that's the exact temperature that you have that bath, and if somebody runs you a bath and you're in the throes of PMDD,
oh, it'd be the worst thing in the world if they've got it wrong.
And they're being so lovely, and they want you to say, oh, that was thank you, because they're doing something nice for you.
Yeah.
But if they do it wrong, that's it. Holy shit, whole hell is let loose.
Yeah, the demon's out over a bath being slightly too cold.
Yeah. So for partners, listen to your wife, listen to your sister, Listen to your girlfriend, because she's not making this up. PMDD is something that you can't fake.
Oh, yeah.
It is a serious, serious, serious mental health issue. And it doesn't just, like we've said before, it doesn't just affect the woman, it affects everybody else around them.
Yeah, it's very heavy, isn't it? Is there anything else that you think you'd like to cover before we end the episode?
I would just like to say that when you've been diagnosed with such a serious mental health issue, this is time for you to remember, remember that you are only human and you need to forgive yourself. And it won't last forever. But please, please, please talk to somebody, because you can be guaranteed that we would like to listen to you rather than not have you here in this world.
100%. I always tell my friends I would rather get a phone call or a text at an inconvenient time than get news that they weren't here anymore.
So please seek help.
Yeah.
And thank you, Brenna, for having me today.
Oh, thank you for coming on.
I feel absolutely exhausted.
Yeah.
With talking about it all.
We need some sugar.
I don't. I'm on a.
Well, I need sugar.
I don't have sugar. Yeah. So if you want to get in touch with me or Jenna.
Brenna.
4 times I've called her Jenna today. Sorry, Brenna.
That's all right. Yeah, if you're worried about symptoms at all, though, or if you just want to talk, you can message me anytime, email me on mamasgonemad23@gmail.com or on the Instagram at mamasgonemad_podcast. But I would advise going to the doctors before it gets worse, because when it gets worse, it becomes impossible. And it's going to get worse, because that's the thing with it. It's a vicious cycle. So
and left untreated, it's just going to change your whole personality, and we just need you to get back to you.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, remember, PMDD isn't who you are. It's just a awful glitch in the brain, unfortunately.
And always remember, it's not you, it's your hormones.
Yeah, that's a good little saying.
Yeah, it's not you, it's your hormones.
Well, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you too.
So I'm aware that this has been my longest episode yet, and I'm aware it was a very heavy subject, but April is PMDD Awareness Month, and I think it is so important to get the message out there, to, as Ruth said, not only women but to men as well, that this is a very severe thing to suffer with, and it's a lot more common than you might think. So please look after yourselves, and as I say, if you ever want to contact me at all, please do. I'm more than happy to talk more in depth about my PMDD privately with anyone who wants to know more, because I understand this fear of going to the doctors and saying, oh, I think I have this, but then wondering if you're going to look a fool or if you're wasting time. So I fully understand that. And yeah, please look after yourselves. That was such a heavy episode. I'm ready to just sit and eat something now and take a breath. But Ruth's such a calming energy. She's an amazing woman. She's been through so much with all that, and yet she's so positive and so creative and so supportive to other women all the time about these things. So I really appreciate her coming on. As usual, if you could please rate and review the podcast and subscribe to it on all of your subscription services. Spotify, Apple Podcasts, all of that. If you could subscribe on all of them, it makes a massive difference. It will also notify you when episodes come out like this. So it's worth being subscribed to if you do enjoy the podcast. And as always, thank you so much for listening to Mama's Gone Mad.
Mama's gone mad. Mama's gone mad. Mama's gone mad.